the rescue and the promise. The stars held no mercy for the dying. This was a truth Captain Terran Velis had learned long ago, sailing the dark oceans between worlds. His people, the Vryn, had survived millennia by understanding this simple fact. They were merchants, travelers, and chroniclers of the cosmic trade routes. Their crystalline bodies shimmered with soft amber light, a bioluminescent glow that pulsed gently with each breath. They were not warriors. They had never needed to be. The merchant vessel Crystal Horizon drifted through the Helios expanse, its cargo holds filled with rare minerals and delicate art from a dozen worlds. Terran stood on the bridge, his tall, angular frame casting prismatic reflections across the walls. His first officer, Denna, approached with concern flickering through her translucent features. "Captain, we are detecting something unusual," she said, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "A debris field ahead. Recent origin. Torrens. Luminescence dimmed slightly, the Vryn equivalent of a frown. Debris fields meant trouble. Pirates, perhaps. Or worse, evidence of the territorial disputes that plagued this sector. The Vryn survived by avoiding such conflicts, by slipping through the spaces between the wars of greater powers. Scan it, he ordered. We plot a course around it if necessary. But as the sensors painted their picture, something unusual appeared. Among the twisted metal and frozen particles, a small object remained intact. A pod. Still transmitting a faint distress signal. "Life signs?" Terran asked. Denna worked her console, her fingers moving through holographic displays. "Affirmative," one being. "Biological readings are strange. Not Vryn. Not any species in our database. Wait." She paused, her glow brightening with surprise. "Captain, the pod's markings. They are Terran." The bridge fell silent. Terran. Human. A species known to the Vryn only through distant stories and rare encounters. Humans were explorers from a distant sector, a young species that had somehow spread across the stars with surprising speed. They were said to be resilient, emotional, and unpredictable. The Vryn had little direct contact with them, and most of what Terran knew came from trader gossip and ancient archives. "The pod is failing," Denna reported. "Oxygen at critical levels. Hull breach detected. If we do not act within the next hour, the being inside will die." Terran felt the weight of decision settle upon him. The Vryn way was to avoid involvement, to preserve their own safety above all else. Yet something stirred within him, something his people called the resonance, the belief that all actions echoed through the universe in ways both seen and unseen. "Bring it aboard," he said quietly. "Medical bay, full quarantine protocols until we understand what we are dealing with." The crew moved efficiently. The Crystal Horizon extended its retrieval arms, drawing the damaged pod into one of the cargo bays. As Terran descended to the medical level, he wondered what he would find. The Vryn had saved many beings over the centuries, but a human? This was unprecedented. The pod door hissed open, releasing a cloud of stale atmosphere. Inside, strapped to an emergency harness, was a creature unlike anything Terran had seen firsthand. Bipedal, covered in a charred flight suit, with short dark hair matted with blood. The human's skin was a light brown tone, bruised and burned, but most striking were the hands, 5-fingered and scarred, still gripping the harness with desperate strength even in unconsciousness. "Genetic scan confirms Terran origin," the medical officer, Wylon, announced. His elderly frame glowed with a deeper amber, the color of ancient wisdom. Female, severe injuries, burns, broken ribs, internal bleeding. But she lives, barely. "Can you save her?" Terran asked. Ilon's light pulsed thoughtfully. "Our biology is different, but the fundamentals of life support remain similar." "Yes, Captain. I believe I can." The days that followed were tense. The human remained unconscious as Ilon worked tirelessly, using Vryn medical technology to repair damaged tissue, stabilize broken bones, and restore depleted systems. The crew whispered among themselves, uncertain about this strange passenger. Humans were rumored to be aggressive, prone to violence. What if she woke and attacked them? but Torin watched over her recovery personally. There was something about the human that intrigued him. Even in her damaged state, she seemed to radiate a peculiar energy. Not the gentle luminescence of the Vryn, but something harder, more intense. A will to survive that burned like a star's core. On the 7th day, she opened her eyes. They were dark brown, almost black, and they moved rapidly across the medical bay, taking in everything with startling speed. The human tried to sit up, gasped in pain, and fell back. Her hand moved instinctively toward her hip, searching for a weapon that was no longer there. "Peace," Torin said softly, stepping into her line of sight. He allowed his luminescence to brighten gently, a Vryn gesture of welcome. "You are safe. You are aboard the Crystal Horizon, a Vryn merchant vessel. We found your pod and brought you here." The human stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, her tense muscles relaxed. When she spoke, her voice was rough from disuse but clear. "Vryn," she said, "I've read about your people. Traitors, peaceful." She attempted a smile, though pain flickered across her features. "Thank you. I thought I was dead." "You nearly were," Eilon said, approaching from the other side. "Your injuries were severe. You have been unconscious for 7 days." "7 days?" The human's eyes widened. "My ship, my crew. We found only your pod," Torin said gently. "I am sorry." The human closed her eyes, and to Torin's surprise, water leaked from beneath her eyelids. He had read that humans expressed grief through liquid secretions, but seeing it firsthand was deeply affecting. The Vryn conveyed sorrow through dimming light, but this seemed somehow more raw, more visceral. "My name is Lieutenant Maya Chen," the human said finally, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Terran Exploration Corps. We were mapping unknown sectors when we encountered a spatial anomaly. It tore our ship apart. I barely made it to the escape pod. I am Captain Torin Velis. You are welcome aboard the Crystal Horizon for as long as you need to recover." Over the following weeks, something unexpected happened. Maya Chen, despite her injuries, became a presence aboard the ship. The Vryn crew, initially wary, found themselves drawn to the human's infectious curiosity and surprising warmth. She asked endless questions about Vryn culture, their crystalline physiology, their art and philosophy. In return, she shared stories of Earth, of humanity's long struggle to reach the stars, of a species that had nearly destroyed itself a dozen times, yet somehow always found the strength to rebuild. Torin found himself spending hours with Maya, discussing everything from navigation techniques to the nature of consciousness. The human had a way of seeing patterns the Vryn missed, of finding solutions through what she called thinking outside the box. She was emotional, yes, but her emotions seemed to fuel her intellect rather than cloud it. "Your people," Maya said, one evening as they sat in the observation deck, watching the stars stream past. "You avoid conflict at all costs. How do you survive in a galaxy full of predators?" "We are not prey," Torin replied, his light pulsing thoughtfully. "We are simply not hunters. We survive by being useful, by creating value that even aggressive species recognize. We are the best navigators, the finest craftsmen, the most reliable merchants. Wars destroy, but trade builds. In the long term, builders outlast destroyers." Maya was quiet for a moment. "That's beautiful," she said. "But what happens when you meet something that only knows destruction? That doesn't value anything but conquest?" "We run," Torin said simply. "We have always run. And we have always survived." "I hope you never have to test that philosophy too hard," Maya said softly. As Maya's recovery progressed, Eilon declared her fit for travel. The Vryn had managed to salvage some components from her pod and, combined with their own technology, had patched together a small functional craft capable of reaching the nearest Terran outpost, 3 weeks' journey away. The day of departure arrived too quickly. The crew gathered in the docking bay, their collective luminescence creating a warm amber glow. Maya, now wearing a repaired flight suit and carrying a small pack of supplies, stood before them. "I don't have words adequate to thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You didn't have to save me. You didn't owe me anything, but you did it anyway with kindness and grace. I will never forget this." "We ask for no payment," Torrin said. "Helping you was payment enough." Maya smiled, but there was something determined in her expression. "I know that's your way, but it's not the human way." She reached into her pack and withdrew a small device, roughly the size of her palm. It was made of dark metal, with a single blue crystal embedded in its center. "This is a Terran emergency beacon. It's keyed to the Exploration Corps priority channels." She handed it to Torrin. The device felt strangely warm in his crystalline hands. "If you ever need help," Maya continued, her dark eyes meeting his with fierce intensity, "if you ever find yourselves in danger you cannot escape, activate this beacon. Send a message, we will come. Humanity never forgets those who show mercy in the dark. We never abandon our friends." Torrin looked at the small device, then back at Maya. "The galaxy is vast," he said gently. "You may be on the other side of known space when that day comes. If it ever comes, then we will cross the galaxy," Maya said simply. "That's what humans do. We're stubborn like that." She smiled, but her expression was serious. "I mean it, Captain. If darkness ever finds you, we will answer. I promise you this on my honor as a Terran officer, and as someone whose life you saved." She extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. Torrin had learned about this custom. He reached out and clasped her hand gently, careful not to harm her softer flesh with his crystalline edges. "I hope we never need to call," he said, "but I will keep this safe, as a reminder of our friendship. That's all I ask." Maya boarded her small craft, waved once more, and sealed the hatch. The crystal horizon released the ship, and Torrin watched from the observation deck as it accelerated away, its small engine burning bright against the infinite dark. Denna joined him, her glow curious. "Do you believe her, Captain? That humans would truly cross the galaxy for us?" Torrin held the beacon carefully, studying its simple design. "I do not know," he admitted. "But I believe she believes it, and perhaps that is enough." He carried the beacon to his personal quarters and placed it in a secure container, along with other treasures collected over decades of travel, a reminder of the strange human who had briefly shared their ship, a token of an unlikely friendship. Years passed. The crystal horizon continued its routes, trading and exploring. The beacon remained undisturbed, a curiosity from a bygone encounter. Torrin sometimes took it out and looked at it, remembering Maya Chen and her fierce promise. He wondered where she was, what she had become. He had no way of knowing that everything was about to change. The darkness Maya had warned about was coming, and it would test whether a human promise meant anything at all when spoken across the vast and uncaring void. The call and the answer 5 years passed like water through fingers. The crystal horizon continued its eternal dance through the trade routes, carrying goods and stories from world to world. Captain Torrin Velis grew older, his crystalline structure deepening to a richer amber, the color of accumulated wisdom. The beacon remained in its case untouched, a memory of a promise made by a grateful human so long ago. But the galaxy was changing. Rumors spread through the trade networks like poison through veins, whispers of entire colonies going silent, distress calls that ended mid-transmission, ships that simply vanished, leaving nothing but empty space where thriving systems once stood. The threat had a name, the Kragoth Swarm. They came from beyond the galactic rim, a species unlike anything the civilized worlds had encountered. The Kragoth were not conquerors in the traditional sense. They did not seek resources or territory. They were parasites on a cosmic scale, consuming entire biospheres, stripping worlds down to barren rock and moving on like locusts made of living metal and hatred. No one knew where they originated. No one understood their language if they even had one. Diplomacy was impossible. The Kragoth did not negotiate. They did not accept surrender. They simply consumed, spreading through space like a cancer, leaving only silence and death in their wake. The first Vryn colonies fell without warning. Meditation Prime, home to 3 billion souls, went dark in a single day. The crystal gardens of Luminos, ancient beyond memory, were reduced to dust. Refugee ships flooded the remaining systems, carrying terrified survivors with stories of impossible horrors. Organic ships that moved like living things. Weapons that dissolved matter at the molecular level. A hunger that could never be satisfied. The Vryn Council convened an emergency session. Their philosophy of avoidance, which had served them for thousands of years, crumbled in the face of an enemy that could not be avoided. The Kragoth did not chase specific targets. They consumed everything in their path, methodically, completely, moving through the galaxy like a wave of extinction. "We must flee," Elder Corrin announced, his ancient light flickering with barely controlled fear. "Abandon the core worlds, scatter to the outer reaches. Some of us will survive." But where could they run? The Kragoth advance was relentless, systematic. They moved through sectors like farmers harvesting crops, leaving nothing alive behind them. The Vryn had no weapons capable of stopping them, no allies powerful enough to help. They were merchants and artists, not warriors. Captain Torrin received his orders 6 months after the invasion began. The Crystal Horizon was to be converted to a refugee transport. All cargo was to be jettisoned, every available space filled with survivors. They would join a convoy attempting to break through the Kragoth blockade and reach unclaimed space beyond the galactic arm. The ship that had once carried rare minerals and beautiful artworks now held thousands of desperate souls. Children pressed against viewing ports, watching their worlds burn in the distance. Elders dimmed their light to conserve energy, their ancient bodies struggling with the stress of displacement. Young Vryn clustered together, their luminescence flickering with shared anxiety. Torrin stood on his bridge, now crowded with extra crew managing life support systems pushed beyond design limits. The convoy ahead of them stretched for millions of kilometers. 300 ships, all that remained of a civilization that had spanned 50 star systems. "Captain," Denna said quietly. Her once bright glow had dimmed to a pale flicker. She had lost her entire family when the Kragoth reached her home colony. "Long-range sensors are detecting movement." "Behind us," Torrin felt his core temperature drop. "Show me." The tactical display painted a nightmare. 200 Kragoth vessels emerging from fold space, cutting off their escape route. The alien ships were grotesque things, organic and mechanical, fused into forms that hurt to look at. They moved with predatory grace, spreading out to surround the fleeing convoy. "They are jamming all communication channels," the sensor officer reported, his voice breaking. "We cannot warn the others. We cannot coordinate." Torrin watched as the first Kragoth ships opened fire. Beams of sickly green light lanced across the void, striking the rearmost refugee vessels. The Vryn ships simply came apart, their crystalline hulls dissolving like sugar in acid. Thousands of lives ended in seconds, thousands more in the following minutes as the Kragoth methodically worked their way through the convoy. "Evasive maneuvers," Torrin ordered, but his voice was hollow. There was nowhere to evade to. The Kragoth had them surrounded. This was the end. The bridge filled with the sounds of fear, crying children in the lower decks, prayers being broadcast over internal channels. The Crystal Horizon shuddered as a near miss sent radiation washing over their shields. Torrin looked around his bridge. His crew, his people, all of them about to die. And for what? They had harmed no one, built beauty instead of weapons, chosen peace over power, and now they would be erased from existence as if they had never been. His hand moved unconsciously to his jacket pocket, where he had carried a small object for 5 years. The beacon. Maya Chen's beacon. "Captain, shields at 40%, Denna reported. "Another hit like that and we are finished." Torrin pulled out the beacon, staring at its simple design. The blue crystal in its center seemed to pulse with inner light. Or perhaps that was just his imagination. Maya's words echoed in his memory. "If darkness ever finds you, we will answer." But that was 5 years ago. Maya Chen was probably on the other side of the galaxy by now, if she even still lived. Humans were fragile, short-lived compared to the Vryn. She might be dead. Her government might have changed. The promise of one officer might mean nothing to the vast machinery of Terran bureaucracy. And even if someone heard the beacon, even if they cared, what could they do? The Kragoth were destroying entire civilizations. What were the Terrans? A young species, barely out of their home system by galactic standards. The Vryn databases listed them as explorers and merchants, much like the Vryn themselves. Not warriors, not saviors. Another explosion rocked the ship. A Vryn transport 300 kilometers ahead simply ceased to exist, consumed by Kragoth weapons fire. "Captain, we need to do something," Denna cried out. Torrin looked at the beacon one final time. They were going to die anyway. What harm could come from activating it? At least Maya would know what happened to them. Someone, somewhere would know that the Vryn had existed, had been worthy of remembering. His crystalline fingers found the activation sequence. The beacon hummed to life, its blue crystal brightening. A holographic interface appeared, requesting a message. Torren spoke, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "This is Captain Torren Velis of the Vryn merchant vessel Crystal Horizon. 5 years ago, we rescued Lieutenant Maya Chen of the Terran Exploration Corps. She gave us this beacon and promised that humanity would answer if we called." He paused, aware of how desperate this sounded. "The Kragoth swarm has destroyed our civilization. We are the last survivors. 300 ships carrying what remains of our people. We are surrounded. We are dying. I do not know if this message will reach anyone. I do not know if anyone will care. But Maya Chen showed us kindness when we needed it most. She said humans never forget their friends. If that is true, if that promise meant anything, we need you now." He ended the transmission. The beacon pulsed once, twice, then settled into a steady rhythm, broadcasting its signal into the void. "Message sent," the communication officer reported. "But Captain, the nearest Terran space is 6 sectors away. Even if someone receives this, even if they respond immediately, it would take weeks for help to arrive." "I know," Torren said quietly. He looked at his crew, at the fear in their dimming lights. "But we tried. We reached out. That is all we can do." The Kragoth continued their methodical slaughter. Another ship died. Then another. The Crystal Horizon's shields dropped to 20%. 15. 10. 3 days passed. The convoy, once 300 ships strong, was reduced to 47. The Crystal Horizon survived through luck and Torren's desperate maneuvering, but their shields were gone. One more hit would breach the hull. The Kragoth seemed to sense this, circling like predators toying with wounded prey. The Vryn had stopped broadcasting prayers, stopped crying. A terrible quiet settled over the ship as everyone simply waited for the end. Parents held their children. Elders dimmed their light to barely perceptible glows. Denna sat at her station, her hands resting on controls that no longer mattered. "Captain," she said softly, "it has been an honor serving with you." "The honor was mine," Torren replied. The Kragoth fleet tightened its formation, weapons charging for a final coordinated strike. 200 alien ships against 47 defenseless transports. It would be over in seconds, then space tore open. There was no other way to describe it. Reality simply split apart, glowing white-hot at the edges. The Kragoth fleet faltered, their ships pulling back in confusion. And through the tear, something emerged. Ships, hundreds of them, thousands. Massive angular vessels painted in dark gray and midnight blue, with markings that blazed white-hot against their hulls. Each one bore the same insignia, TDF, Terran Defense Fleet. The lead ship was a monster, a dreadnought easily 10 kilometers long, bristling with weapons arrays that looked like they could crack planets. Its hull was scarred from countless battles, but it moved with terrifying grace, like a predator that had evolved for the sole purpose of killing. Every screen on the Crystal Horizon's bridge lit up simultaneously. Every speaker crackled to life, and a voice, human and unmistakably commanding, filled the void. "This is the Terran Defense Fleet. All Vryn vessels, maintain current position. Kragoth forces, you have 10 seconds to withdraw or be destroyed. There will be no further warning." Torren's light flared bright with shock. "They came," he whispered. "By the stars, they actually came." The Kragoth did not withdraw. Perhaps they did not understand the warning. Perhaps they did not care. They had never encountered resistance they could not overcome. They turned their weapons toward the Terran fleet and opened fire. The Terrans answered. What followed was not a battle. It was an execution. The dreadnought, identified on tactical displays as the TSS Remembrance, fired a single round from its main railgun. The projectile, accelerated to relativistic speeds, struck the center of the Kragoth formation. The resulting explosion consumed 15 alien ships in an instant, their organic mechanical hulls simply ceasing to exist under the kinetic impact. The rest of the Terran fleet opened fire. Hundreds of vessels, each one bristling with weapons technology decades ahead of anything the Vryn had ever seen. Lance beams that punched through Kragoth armor like paper. Missile swarms that adapted and learned with each passing second. point defense systems that created walls of destruction nothing could penetrate. The Kragoth fleet, which had seemed invincible mere moments ago, began to die. Not slowly, not through attrition, but systematically, precisely, with the cold efficiency of a surgeon removing cancer. Every Terran shot found its mark. Every volley claimed multiple targets. The aliens tried to flee, to scatter, to use the tactics that had let them consume dozens of civilizations. The Terrans did not let them. Fighter craft, small and impossibly agile, swarmed from carrier vessels, hunting down fleeing Kragoth ships like wolves after scattered prey. Destroyers formed kill boxes, trapping alien vessels and obliterating them with concentrated fire. And through it all, the Remembrance advanced, its main gun firing again and again, each shot erasing another cluster of enemy ships from existence. Torren watched in stunned silence. His entire species had fallen before the Kragoth in months. The Terran fleet was destroying them in minutes. "Captain," the sensor officer said, his voice filled with awe, "the Kragoth fleet is down to 60 vessels. 50, 40, 20, 10, 0. The void fell silent. Where 200 Kragoth warships had been, there was now only debris and fading energy signatures. Not a single alien vessel had escaped. The Terran fleet reformed, surrounding the Vryn refugees in a protective formation. The communication channel opened again. "Vryn vessels, this is Admiral Maya Chen of the Terran Defense Fleet. We are establishing a perimeter. You are safe now. Medical and support ships are inbound. We're going to get you through this." Torren's light flared so bright it hurt. "Maya," he breathed, "that human officer?" Denna asked. "She commands their entire fleet?" Before Torren could respond, a new message appeared on his private channel. "Captain Velas, permission to come aboard?" 15 minutes later, a Terran shuttle docked with the Crystal Horizon. The airlock cycled and a figure stepped through. Maya Chen, but changed. 5 years had aged her human features, adding lines around her eyes and streaks of gray to her dark hair. She wore a crisp military uniform, medals across her chest and the insignia of an admiral on her shoulders. But when she saw Torren, her stern expression melted into a brilliant smile. "Captain," she said simply. "Admiral," Torren replied, his voice breaking. "You came. You actually came. I promised, didn't I?" Maya stepped forward and, in a gesture that shocked the gathered Vryn crew, embraced Torren carefully, mindful of his crystalline structure. "Humans keep their promises, especially to friends." She pulled back and Torren saw moisture in her eyes again. Happy tears this time. "When your beacon activated, I was in a strategy meeting on Earth. The signal came through priority channels exactly as designed. I recognized the signature immediately." She smiled. "I commandeered the entire 5th Fleet, told the Admiralty I'd explain later, and opened full drives to get here. We've been traveling at maximum speed for 3 days straight." "You brought thousands of ships," Torren said. "Your entire fleet?" "Not my entire fleet," Maya corrected. "This is just the 5th. When I explained the situation, 6 other fleet groups started preparing to deploy. But I knew we couldn't wait. The Kragoth have been on our radar for months. We've been hunting them, trying to stop their advance. When I learned they had reached your people..." Her expression hardened. "Well, they just learned why you don't threaten humanity's friends." Over the following hours, the Terran fleet worked with stunning efficiency. Medical ships tended to wounded Vryn. Engineering vessels began repairs on damaged transports. Supply ships distributed food, medicine, and replacement parts. And through it all, Terran officers moved among the refugees, speaking words of comfort in carefully learned Vryn dialects, offering what humans called hope. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Crystal Horizon, looking out at her fleet surrounding the Vryn convoy like protective guardians. "We're taking you to Sanctuary Station," she told Torren. "It's a Terran facility in the Andromeda cluster, fully defended outside the Kragoth invasion path. You'll be safe there while we find you a new home." "A new home?" Torren's light pulsed with confusion. Maya nodded. The Terran Assembly voted unanimously. Any Vryn who wish it can settle in human-protected space. "We're offering you 3 uninhabited worlds in the Kepler sector. Good planets, Earth-like, suitable for colonization. They're yours if you want them. No payment required. No strings attached." "Why?" Torren asked. "We are not your people. We have nothing to offer in return." Maya turned to face him, her dark eyes serious. 5 years ago, you found a dying human in a broken pod. You didn't have to save me. It would have been safer, easier to just leave me there. But you didn't. You risked your ship, your crew, to save one lost soul from a species you barely knew. She smiled. You showed me that the universe, despite all its darkness, still has light. You gave me hope. And hope, Captain, is the most precious thing in existence. She gestured to the fleet surrounding them. This is humanity saying thank you. This is us returning the kindness you showed one of ours. And more than that, this is us saying that we believe in the same things you do, that compassion matters, that mercy has power, that we stand together against the darkness or we fall separately into it. Torrin felt something crack inside him, a wall of fear and despair that had been building for months. His light flared bright, brighter than it had in years, and for the first time since the Kragoth came, he felt the return of something he thought his people had lost forever. Hope. Thank you, he said, his voice breaking. Thank you for remembering us. Always, Maya said simply. Humanity never forgets. The Terran Fifth Fleet escorted the Vryn refugees to safety, their ships forming an impenetrable wall against the darkness. Behind them, scattered across the void, the wreckage of the Kragoth fleet drifted cold and lifeless. A message to any who would threaten the innocent. And in the years that followed, the Vryn rebuilt, not alone but alongside their human allies. Children grew up on worlds protected by Terran ships, learning stories of the day the sky filled with human vessels, answering a call sent across the void by a captain who had once shown kindness to a dying stranger. The Kragoth would return, testing humanity's defenses again and again, but they would never reach the Vryn. The humans had drawn a line in the stars, and that line would not be crossed, because humanity remembered. And when humans made a promise, they kept it, no matter the cost, no matter the distance. In the end, a single act of mercy had saved an entire civilization, and the galaxy learned a new truth, that compassion, however small, could echo across the stars with the force of 1,000 suns.